Hello and welcome to EntheoRadio, where we talk about shamanism, psychedelics, and altered states for healing. This is a consciousness podcast, and this is your captain speaking, Hugh T Alkemi. I'm here with a very special guest today, and these episodes are recorded. Andrew Reynolds, welcome to the show.
Hey, Hugh, thanks for having me.
Yeah, let me get your bio out there for everybody listening. Andrew Reynolds has been exploring consciousness since he began meditating as a 4-year-old. His interest in consciousness and reality led him to receive degrees in physics and psychology, as well as extensive work with psychedelics and practices such as meditation, mindfulness, and yoga. He lives now in Denver, where he was on the executive board for the Psychedelic Club of Denver and is a meditation instructor. He's a psilocybin ceremony facilitator and integration life coach. His favorite pastimes are rock climbing and playing and listening to music as well. Of course, experiencing the curveballs that life has to offer. He's going to tell us about those curveballs today. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So, wow. How did you get into the club? Well, I guess we should probably hit up like your first psychedelic experience on the way to being involved with the club. And then maybe you could tell us a little bit of a story about how Denver decriminalized because you lived through that, right?
I did, yeah. Um, so my first psychedelic experience happened, I want to say I was 20 years old. I'm 37 now. And I had gotten interested in cannabis and um, just wanted to see what else the earth had to offer in terms of, you know, I mean, the truth of the matter is at the time I was just trying to get high. And I took some mushrooms with a friend of mine out in the woods in New Jersey, and I had a really special experience in uh, in that intangible way that I think only, well, for me so far, only psychedelics can give, and that really got me interested in a deeper way, in a way of expanding consciousness and exploring reality and my own mind and the human psyche, um, which led to this 17-year journey. And then asking about decriminalization here in Denver, that was actually before I joined the Psychedelic Club. And they were really instrumental in getting that legislation on the ballot. It was the people from the club who are out there collecting signatures. And I first became aware of it because I went to a show at the Fillmore, and there was a guy who I later became friends with out there with a billboard, a clipboard, and he walked up to me and he was starting to give his spiel, but I just saw that it said decriminalize psilocybin, and I was on LSD at the time, actually. And I was like, I will sign that. Um, and he was like, cool, great. Are you a Denver voter? And I was like, yes, I am. So they got it on the ballot just due to a lot of hard work on the part of the club and Kevin Matthews, who was the person who spearheaded that movement. And Denver voters, it came really, really close to voting it down, but it was just enough over 50% that the legislation passed. And it's really amazing to live here now in a decriminalized world where you kind of don't feel like you have to be looking over your shoulder all the time. And
Yeah.
it's cool. I went to the coffee shop with my dad the other day, and there were these two guys sitting next to us just talking about growing mushrooms. And it was like, oh, this is not taboo at all. This is really cool. And
That's wonderful.
yeah, it's great.
So it took away a lot of the element of fear around Denver, at least, right?
Absolutely. And, I talk to a lot of just what I would call normal folks these days who are really interested in psilocybin for healing, whether it's microdosing or macrodosing. And I think Michael Pollan's book, How to Change Your Mind, has had a pretty big impact on that as well. Um, but it's really moved it a lot more into the mainstream, where people are able to look at it as not this crazy drugged out thing, but rather as an opportunity for growth and healing.
Beautiful, beautiful. And so you kind of stepped into the executive board, like a
Mhm.
leadership position for the Psychedelic Club after the decrim. What year
Yeah,
was that approximately?
I want to say that was probably about it was about 3 years ago. I took ayahuasca for the first time, and that completely turned my life around. And up until that point, I had gotten a lot of benefit from working with psychedelics. I had never had it. Well, as I said, it was my first time taking ayahuasca, and I took it, and I just realized, I had a lot of work to do. I thought I was this psychedelic warrior, and kind of had that I'll say arrogance, I think, that a lot of people get when they take a lot of psychedelics. They think they
Sure.
know it all. That was me. And I realized I was a total amateur, actually, and that I needed to get involved in community a little bit more. So I just looked up Psychedelic Organizations Denver, and I found them, and started going to meetings. And it turns out the first meeting I went to was about ayahuasca. So I was like, I'm totally in the right place here.
Yeah.
And I got to be friendly with the guy who was the president at the time. And I was going every week pretty much, as long as I was free. And when the elections came up for the leadership roles in the club, I just went up to the guy who was the leader at the time and said, you made this announcement about people who want to take on leadership roles. I'd love to be one of those people. And I was on the board then for probably about a year and a half, I think.
Wow.
And it's a great organization. I really love them and what they do. And I had a great time working with them and for them. And it just my life kind of got to a point where I was a little too busy to
Sure.
keep that up.
So somewhere along the lines, you became a facilitator, and now it says part of your bio. I mean, you've got a lot of things you're doing, including meditation instruction.
Hmm.
But I think inside of this question is like, how did you become a facilitator? How did it go from non-psychedelic work to working with psychedelics? And I think a lot of listeners are very um, like they're waiting on the tip of their chairs to hear, like, how do you become a facilitator? What qualifications, like what processes, what callings?
Yeah, thank you for asking. I'll start with the calling. That actually happened on the same weekend that I took ayahuasca. That was 2 days in a row. Um, so I was struggling pretty hard with depression at that time. I mean, that's been kind of a lifelong issue. And I was at a particularly low point right before I took ayahuasca, and I got some pretty clear messages during that weekend, the two ceremonies that I did, about how I was causing my own unhappiness, and it just flipped things around for me. And also during one of those ceremonies, I kind of got the message in my head: you have been given this gift. You need to now pay it forward.
Yeah.
So I decided, well, I live in Denver where psilocybin is decriminalized, and I'm getting this message. So I need to look into that. So I actually Googled training for psychedelic facilitation,
Huh.
and what came up was Medicinal Mindfulness, which is an organization here in Boulder, Colorado, headed by Daniel and Allison McQueen. They're really great people, and they do really great work. She actually is part of the MAPS research.
Okay.
She's one of the
Yeah.
psychologists involved. So I found they had this training program, and I was like, all right, should I do this? Should I not do this? I don't know. And then this is back when I was just attending Psychedelic Club as a member, not as a leader. I went to they did this documentary series called Psychedelia, and it was it's a series on Gaia. I highly recommend it to everybody listening. It's really cool. And there's one episode that's on cannabis, and they had this guy Daniel McQueen um, in the videos all the time. And then he was on the panel afterwards. But they screened this video at a movie theater here, and I just went up to him and I was like, "Hey, Daniel, you're not gonna believe this, but I was just Googling you today, and here you are. Oh my God, I can't believe it. I'm really interested in your psychedelic sitter school." And he's like, "Yeah, send me an email." So I did, and I took the course, the psychedelic sitter training.
Wow.
It's about a week long, I think,
Wow.
and so I did that, and it's a certificate course, and so I got that certificate. And for a while there, I just kind of worked with friends, kind of getting my sea legs there. And once I felt pretty comfortable with it, I started expanding outwards and offering my services to other people.
That's beautiful. That's wonderful. Hey,
Yeah, thank you.
can I ask some detailed questions, or you should
Please.
about the course?
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm not sure if it's like a very private thing, but they must have put you through a few trips, right? What was that like?
So, they are an above ground organization, and they have, their information is all out on the internet. And actually, Daniel's um, message is that you can use cannabis as a psychedelic. And I was pretty skeptical about that, I'll be honest. As I think probably a lot of people who are familiar with marijuana would be like, all right, sure. But it really is about set and setting,
Okay.
and Daniel has really mastered how to turn cannabis into a psychedelic experience. So on our first day, we made this blend of cannabis and we packed up our bowls, and I was like, all right, well, I was sort of like, they're just using cannabis because they have to stay legal. And it was actually a very psychedelic experience. Like, I was getting borderline DMT level
Wow.
visuals. Not quite, not quite that intense, but it was really intense and it was really deep. And we we're working every single day, doing work with cannabis every single day. So it was kind of a grueling week. You're really doing a lot of introspection and self-analysis. Um, and so the experiences that we had were all with cannabis, which of course here in Colorado is totally legal.
Yeah. Interesting. So, so then you applied. We went on, got the certificate, and applied those hours of basically psychedelic journey work procedure using cannabis to all of the mushroom psilocybin facilitated work that you may be doing
Hmm.
now. And that's basically it. You got a template.
Yeah.
And well, what happened? Oh, so off cuff question, curveball
Sure.
that you love. What happens when somebody has a bad trip? That concept.
I don't believe in bad trips.
Yeah.
To me, the only thing that would qualify as a bad trip is like the building catches on fire, or,
Yeah.
somebody runs into traffic.
Danger. Physical.
Um, yeah, right. To me, actually, what most people, I like the term challenging experience.
Yes.
And the truth of the matter is that that's kind of what I'm hoping for people to have. Not that I'm wishing people discomfort, but we grow through our challenges. You don't get stronger by, lifting the same weight you've been lifting for the same 5 years. You got to add 5 pounds to it or whatever. And it's the same with our psyches and our spirits and minds. So people, when they work with me, do tend to go through some challenges. And one of the things that makes a trip, quote, bad is when you start having kind of a hard time and everybody around you starts being like, "Oh my God, are you okay? We're going to take care of you. We're going to make this better."
Fear.
Yeah. And getting that reflected back at the person who has taken the entheogen.
Compounding fear.
Yeah, it's really just making things worse. Whereas if, my strategy there is to say, yeah, I hear that you're having some hard times. I'm here for you. How are we going to move towards this? what's there behind that door? What are we learning from this experience? And what comes up for people in those challenging moments tends to be the greatest moments of growth for them, in my experience. And that's not to say that when I'm working with people, everything is just a hard time. People have highs and lows, they have joy and sorrow. And what matters is where you come out on the other side. And
Absolutely.
I have found that people who really confront and walk towards those challenges are the ones who grow the most.
Reminds me of the phrase work from a beautiful movie and book series. Fear is the mind killer. And
Yeah, Dune, right?
if you go to the end of that phrase, it says, I will allow my fear to pass through me, over me, and only I will remain.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, and I think you're right on to look at the perspective of it's a challenging experience, and when we have challenging experiences, we grow. And this is true of non-psychedelic experiences in life too.
Absolutely.
So that might bring us to some of your other things. You're a rock climber, you're a musician. I'd say like those are both creative and challenging.
Mm-hmm.
Were you always that way, or did you just start picking that up as part of your psychedelic novelty practices?
Seeking challenges?
Yeah.
Um, I think I've always sought challenges in my life. But I also think that I've really avoided them too. It's kind of been both ways. I kind of, self-medicated pretty hard for a while there in some negative ways. So there were a few years there where I was just really turning my back on life's challenges.
Yeah.
Um, so it's been a give and take, really. I think that when I was pretty young, up until I went to college, I probably sought out challenge and pushed myself in whatever endeavors I was involved in. And then for a while there, just tried to drink everything away, smoke everything away. And
Wow.
that doesn't work out well.
No, it doesn't challenge us. Eventually,
Right.
it becomes monotony.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so I've got a follow up question to that. Um, you've described challenging experiences that other people have had. Maybe you can give us some examples of different substances and what they showed you that were challenging visions, whether they were, LSD or psilocybin or ayahuasca. I don't know if you've done Wachuma San Pedro, but
Mm-hmm.
please give us some story, because they want to, when they're listening to this show, they want to really latch on to the feelings and the compassion and the experiences that we're hearing in your words, alongside with your story.
Yeah. Well, I have a lot of stories about psychedelic experiences, but I think that one of the most compelling ones is the one that I've alluded to already, which was my first ayahuasca experience. That the 2 day, it was a Friday, Saturday, 2 days in a row. As I said, I was feeling pretty down. I was actually having some suicidal ideations. Um, and to put a little background on it, I had a a drinking problem, and I had gotten sober about, I think, 2 years before that.
Hmm.
Which that drinking problem ended with I wrecked my car. My BAC was 0.221, and this is awful. But
Hmm.
I was getting drunk before I was driving because I was hoping that would happen. Except I was hoping I was, gonna not come out on the other side. So I was finding myself back in that state of mind again, where I was wanting my life to kind of end. Um, and I wasn't drinking anymore, but I was in the same headspace. And so the first night of ayahuasca was just pure misery. Um, which, ayahuasca is not fun. Um,
It's not the best flavor. You probably got threw up.
yeah, I sure did. And, when I was I was throwing up in the bucket and I was looking in it and I was like, these are all of your negative thoughts. This is your self-loathing. This is your judgment. This is disgusting. This is in your body. This is in your mind. That was the major takeaway from the first night. There were like no visuals whatsoever. I just felt like I had the flu basically and was like expelling negativity. On the second night, I it was actually a lot more of the same until at some point I just like laid down. I just could not sit up anymore. And I found myself on a beach. And so I actually grew up about 3 blocks from the beach in New Jersey. So
Okay.
probably significant. And I mean, it was like I was there, like I knew that I was in this room on ayahuasca, but it was also like I was there on the beach. It wasn't like I was watching a movie of it. I was there.
Yeah.
And the phrase hold a grudge came across my consciousness. And I was like, what does it mean? What does that mean to hold a grudge? And I looked down in my hand and there was this black object. It was sort of like a black hole. It was like sucking all of the love and the light and bliss, all the good things. It was sucking it all into it and just killing it. And it was in my hand.
Yeah.
And it was so heavy and dense. And one of the hallmarks, of DMT is kind of it feels as though something is coming to you externally,
Mhm.
and it's like that with ayahuasca too, for me at least. And I heard a voice say, love is like electricity. It's like a hot air balloon and it will lift you up, but not if you hold that. Do
Well,
you want to hold that? And I said no. And I put it down in the sand and I walked away. And the next day was like, I just felt so joyful and blissful and well and okay.
yeah.
And there was a grudge that I was holding against somebody that I love so dearly and who loves me so much. Um, and I called him and I was able to talk to him. And that's just been one of the best things that has ever happened to me. Um, and just for the record, one of the really important things about psychedelics is like it's not a magic pill. You don't just get to take it and everything's okay. But if you do the work after you get the message,
Yeah.
change happens. And that's been my experience. And I have never reached that kind of low since then. I've had friends die, I've gone through breakups since then, and I've never gone that low. Um,
The low is referring to when you were driving drunk and crashed your car.
Yeah, and even, on the 2 days before, I mean, the day before I
The day
had my
before
my
when you were just
2-day.
purging.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, it changed my life. That is certainly maybe the most, if not the most, one of the most profound psychedelic experiences I've ever had.
That's such a beautiful turning point story.
Yeah.
And I think with ayahuasca, it's almost like a 12-step program. Maybe it's not as many steps. It's like if you're doing it correctly with a guide and in a tradition, you're also having to change your diet and your viewing. You're not just your eating habits, your drinking habits, but your viewing habits. You're told to be a little bit less consumptive of media on the way to the retreat. Did you practice those methods too?
I did. That particular time, I only cut out cannabis for about a week before.
Okay.
And so at that time, I was an all day, every day weed smoker.
Oh,
And now I do it, you know, once every few months. Also since that ayahuasca experience, I just don't really feel like I need it anymore.
Yeah.
But it's fun, it's nice.
Yeah.
And yeah, so other than that, I'm already vegan, so I didn't have to worry about any of that stuff. But I did cut out salt. That was the hard one, was salt and spicy food.
Okay. Yeah.
Because I put a lot of salt on my food, and I love hot food.
Yeah.
But you know what's really interesting about that? I think the prep for ayahuasca can be just as important,
Yeah.
because
I
you
think.
like cleanse yourself in that way too. Um, I kind of forgot to start adding salt to my food even for a few weeks after the experience. And then when I finally had salt again, I was like, God, this is really overbearing. Why do we put so much salt in our food all the time?
Hmm.
But as far as the prep work, I actually think there are health concerns. So, if you're on certain medications, that's really, really important before you take ayahuasca. But for most of us, the most important thing is media.
Yeah. Oh
What are you consuming? Are you spending all your time on social media? Are you watching a lot of garbage? It's not to say that you can't, do that stuff, but being aware of what you're doing is really important.
yeah. Oh man. And that's partially, I mean, if you eat nothing, you do the diet perfectly, but then you consume a lot of media, that's what you throw up.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen it. I've been through that ayahuasca retreat process and the dieta. And man, people have a hard time. I had a difficult time, and then it was followed with beautiful experiences. Um, I think one of my favorite things, and I don't know what instruments you play, but I was just revisiting this over the weekend with my roommate. We were talking about chaturanga. I think it's a guitar that comes from Peru. It's sort of like a ukulele, but it's 12 strings, and it's a
Cool.
very bright, light instrument. And I remember our ayahuasquero playing that, and it really just changed the vibration. And it felt like, and it may even have been a vision of mine, like it was gold, like there was gold light shooting out of the guitar or something.
Yeah. That's so cool. I love the interplay of music and ayahuasca. There's a real synergy there.
And there seems to be a synergy with psilocybin too in music and
Mhm.
enhancing our senses. So,
Absolutely.
what do you play? What's your musician style?
So, I've been singing for my whole life. I grew up singing in church. I'm no longer a church person, but I'm very grateful for the gift of music. My main instrument is guitar, but I think over the course of my life, I've played 11 instruments. Um,
Wow,
but guitar is the only one I'm good at. The rest I just kind of dabble.
that's wonderful. Do you use that as a meditation tool or a tool for ceremony?
Absolutely. Actually, looping back around to your question about challenging experiences,
Hmm.
that is usually how I guide people when they're having a challenging experience. There's the verbal component, maybe a physical component, depending if there's that level of comfort. I might hold hands with the person or something like that. And music can really help a person to ride the wave rather than to try to swim against it.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, I mean, obviously, surfing as an example is sometimes a fearful experience. I was watching surf videos of waves that are like probably 50 times the height of
Yeah.
the surfer. But if you breathe through it and you ride it, you don't get subject to the force.
Mm-hmm.
You move with its power. And that, I think, is a really beautiful analogy for moving through the waves of psychedelia and the waves of like intensity of breakdown of these molecules like DMT and psilocybin in our bodies. We're riding waves. They don't just usually smack us like smoking 5-methoxy DMT. They give us waves of, okay, something's changing. Now, if we can flow with that, it's not going to be difficult as much.
Absolutely. And there is that. I think that surrender is really important there.
Yeah.
Just allowing the wave to carry you,
Yes,
rather than trying to impose your will on it.
absolutely. So tell us how people get involved, because I mean, I'm not over there. I'm in Arizona, but I know Denver and places like Denver and Colorado at large has decriminalized a lot of different things, at least for personal use. And
Mhm.
I was hearing, and this is kind of funny, that area is becoming like a psychedelic tourist spot. How do people reach out to you? How do you know if somebody's a true seeker versus a psychedelic tourist? And do you serve both those people? How are you a facilitator? And what do people? I mean, because I would trip with you if I was in the area. You seem like a compassionate person who's done the work on themselves.
Well, thanks, man.
Yeah.
Um, so ideally, I'm working with people who are seekers, but I when I showed up to my first ayahuasca experience, I was a psychedelic tourist, and I'm a better person, and not to say that I wasn't also seeking, but I was really just there to be like, to see what's this ayahuasca I've been hearing about for 10 years, what's going on here.
Right.
And that was tremendously beneficial to me. So who would I be to turn someone away?
Mm-hmm.
That being said, um, I did have a website for a little while, but I just felt like that was a little more exposure than I wanted. So I am purely word of mouth at this point. And, so it's people who are seeking spiritual growth, or, who are trying to work on certain psychological or emotional issues that they might have, referring other people who are seeking those same things at this point. So, yeah, I know that there are people who are pretty willing to put themselves out there on the internet. Um, I'm I'm not that person.
Yeah.
I really like the word of mouth method. It is its own filter. It really brings the right people into my world, I would say.
Okay. And are you participating in social media and people see you out there?
I actually deleted all of my social media a few months ago.
Wow.
Um, and that's just, that's for my own mindfulness practice. Um, will I put it back out there? It's always possible. It's easier to reach people, when you're on social media. But that being said, it hasn't been too much of a challenge to connect with the people I need to connect with.
Yeah, it sounds like spirit is guiding you to connect with the right folks.
Yeah.
And that referral system is always good and gold. It takes the fear out of a lot of circumstances.
Yeah.
Social media is such a two-way looking glass. It's like a black mirror or an orb.
Yeah.
Like Gandalf says, you never know who's looking through the other side.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said.
So, in that regard, I suppose if people are looking to reach you, then they'll just have to reach out to me through the podcast and our little video here, and I could reach out to you if they seem interested in your area.
I think that, you should feel free to share my information with anybody who reaches out to you. One of the other things about my particular practice is that I work with people usually for a couple of hours, on split up over 2 sessions before we even take the medicine.
Okay.
So, I don't think there's too many people who are just looking to, eat some boomers and wander around and laugh at stuff, who want to like talk to me about their deepest, darkest feelings before they do that. I think that also is a good selection criteria process, I guess I should say.
Excellent. I have two follow-up questions.
Mhm.
Speaking on the topic of boomers, like where do you get them in your area? Does everyone just grow them out there now? And once you have them, what do you think is reasonable for people to do? Macrodosing, microdosing? What's your prescription? What's your suggested dose? What's right for you?
Well, if people are drawn to microdosing, I encourage that. There have been some interesting studies recently, and I'm a little hesitant to bring up, but in the um, name of transparency, there's these two studies that came out recently that indicate that microdosing might be placebo. I still microdose and I still get great effects from it.
Mhm.
And whether or not it's placebo doesn't matter to me, you know. But I don't think you need a guide necessarily. Maybe somebody to coach you on the process, that's great. Um, but I encourage a when I work with people, I'm looking for a heroic dose.
Okay.
Um, so, you know, as Terence McKenna famously said, 5 grams is a heroic dose.
Okay.
Um,
Of
I
substances.
Yes, of the actual psilocybin mushrooms themselves, dried. Um, I don't feel that it's one size fits all. I've worked out a formula based on how much psilocybin is given in Johns Hopkins and how much psilocybin is in a typical dried psilocybin mushroom per gram. So it depends how much, it depends what size you are. So I am 5.5 feet tall. I'm not a big guy, you know, whereas Terence McKenna was 6 feet tall. For me, a heroic dose is around 4.2 grams. For
Okay.
him, it was 5 grams. But to me, the big change occurs most of the time when you're having these like mystical experiences, when you're really breaking down the ego. Um, so the truth is that any dose of mushrooms is the right dose for a certain set and setting.
Okay.
For you know, if you're seeking this kind of growth, um, I think heroic is the way to go.
Yeah. And then what would be the frequency suggested?
You know, I think that it really depends on the person. Um, I think I, for the majority of people, I don't suggest more than 4 times a year. That
Okay.
being said, I trip more than 4 times a year and I do it recreationally. You know, I don't want to be on here, you know, being all high and mighty about the way that you do it. I also think that recreational psychedelic use is great.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I wouldn't be here talking to you if it wasn't for recreational psychedelic use, you know, and I think that's true of a lot of people. I've met a lot of people who had an awakening experience while they were dancing their ass off at a music festival. And that's beautiful too.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, everything is really. So, but there's also people who have one psychedelic experience in their lives. It changes everything. It changes their perspective, and they don't need to do it ever again.
Yeah.
That's great too. You know, it's all groovy. You know, so I think it really depends on the person and what they're seeking.
Okay. And then, so not that a lot of our audience is like you or I, where they're facilitators, but let's for those facilitators out there or those aspiring sitters, how do we know somebody is like truly a seeker? Like, what are the telltale signs of being them being ready and willing to take those bigger mystical ego destroying experiences? And you know, as a friend to these people, what are we looking to hear from them?
I think the number one word is vulnerability. You
Mm.
know, if somebody's really willing to come to you candidly, I mean, I get people I've never talked to before, you know, never met in my whole life. And they're like, I have this addiction, you know, I have this problem with opiates, or, you know, I I'm so depressed because of this thing. I have PTSD from being in a war, stuff where somebody's really willing to just be fully honest and present with you. That really matters.
Yeah.
Sometimes people can be a little evasive, and I don't take that personally. I think that they're not being evasive with me, they're being evasive with themselves.
Mm.
But if you're being evasive with yourself, you might want to do a little more work before you step into doing any kind of deep medicine work. That also, though, isn't to say that that isn't the key to moving past those evasion tactics. And of course, I think you got to check in with your own heart and your own intuition.
Yeah.
I think that sometimes we're wrong about people. There's no denying that. But for the most part, humans are pretty good at feeling each other out. And if there's something kind of needling in the back of your mind, you might want to explore that and see what that is, before working with somebody.
Absolutely. Great suggestion. Great advice there.
Thank you.
Yeah, that speaks to making heart-based decisions.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the biggest thing we can leave potential seeking sitters, people that are like wanting to facilitate.
Yeah.
Make heart-based decisions. All right. Well, I am feeling pretty solid on this. Let's see. So, how do we let people get in touch with you? How would you prefer?
You've got my phone number and my email address. Anybody who wants it, they can have it. Just, I guess put EntheoRadio in the subject line, and I'll know where they're coming from.
Sure. I mean, I do a little bit of pre-screening because I deal with a lot of people that come through and ask me lots of different questions.
Sure.
So I'll probably just be like, hey, did you listen to that whole interview? What about it struck you? What is your goal here? Before I even pass them on to you. But if anyone out there is listening and excited about Andrew Reynolds, he's in Denver and he's super happy to help people that are truly seeking. And do you have a fee? I'm sure you have a fee for your time, yeah?
I do. Yeah. I mean, it's, my work is donation based.
Okay.
And, I have never said no to anybody because of money. I'm here to help people out. I love to be compensated for my time,
Yeah.
but it's a lot more important to me to help people out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to be a part of their journey. I mean, also I have to say, you can probably relate to this. The rewards of helping someone to move forward or to grow are far greater than any amount of money I've ever made.
Yes. Yes.
Um, Also, about contacting me, it just occurred to me I still have LinkedIn where I'm
Oh.
listed under my name, and you'll see some keywords in there that would make it clear that I'm that Andrew Reynolds and not the skateboarder.
I'll have to add you to my LinkedIn so people.
Yeah, please do.
Um,
So
yeah, I wanted to encourage people to write to entheoradio@gmail.com or host@entheoradio.com, and you'll be able to get a conversation started with yours truly, and I can forward your information on.
please do.
Um, we missed a question in there. I think we got to circle back real quick.
Okay.
So I know it's kind of a funny topic, but I'm sure people go to Denver and they start looking for mushrooms. Where can people find these things?
You can't. So there, I
It's
mean,
not
you
like
can.
Holland or Amsterdam yet.
No, it's not. So I'm really glad that you're asking this, because people, there's a difference between decriminalized and legal.
Mm,
So marijuana is legal, alcohol is legal, mushrooms are decriminalized. So, the chief of police here has instructed officers to treat psilocybin as the lowest level offense. So like if you're out, and you drop a bag of mushrooms and a cop sees you, they might confiscate it. They might write you a ticket.
Oh, all
But
right.
it's still illegal. It's just not criminal. I haven't heard of anybody getting ticketed or anything like that. You are not allowed to sell these. That's illegal. That's a felony.
Ah,
You are
possession
allowed.
criminalized.
Yeah, yeah.
Possession, I see.
And that's a
And
really important distinction.
transportation? You can walk with them?
You can walk with them, and I think you're allowed to have up to 2 ounces.
Okay,
Maybe it's 1 ounce. I can't remember for sure off the top of my head. You are allowed to give psilocybin mushrooms as a gift, but you cannot be compensated for them.
excellent. Okay, those are great things to know.
Yeah. So there are people out here who are selling them. I know that people have seen, psilocybin chocolate bars here and there for sale. I would avoid those because there's no legal oversight there. It's sort of like buying booze during Prohibition. You
Yeah.
really don't know what that is.
Okay.
Um, and basically, if you want to get mushrooms in Denver, you need to have a friend who grew them themselves and is willing to give them to you. Um, or I mean, let's suppose I have a friend who grew them and they gifted me some, and you come to Denver, I can absolutely gift them further down the line to you,
I see.
but I would not take any kind of compensation for that.
I see.
Um, spores, of course, are legal. They do not contain psilocybin. They're legal in most states. I don't think all 50, but you can have spores. Maybe I'm wrong about that.
I think there's like two states. One is California where they're not
Yeah,
supposed
I
to
think you're
have
right.
spores. I think Indiana, California.
But I will say that cops out here are a lot less concerned about psilocybin than they are about, heroin and meth. So if you're not being an idiot, you you probably won't have any problems. Not that I'm encouraging anyone to solicit or distribute mushrooms at all, but it's pretty low down on the food chain.
Okay. Yeah, I have yet to visit that area, Denver, Boulder. Um, so I don't know what it's like. I was briefly in Colorado. Um, where's Rain at? She's in Bayfield, but where's Bayfield next to? I forgot the name of the city there.
I
It's the close to Arizona Four Corners side of
Isn't she in like near Durango or
Durango.
something?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So there's really not a lot going on in Durango.
right.
I don't really understand whether or not it's just your zone, your citywide zone, or it's the whole state. Do you know?
So all drugs with a few exceptions of things that can be used to hurt people, like roofies, are defelonized in all of Colorado.
Ah,
Psilocybin is decriminalized only in Denver.
I see. I see.
So if you go outside to, Fort Collins, Loveland, Boulder, you're dealing with the same laws we always were dealing with psilocybin. I mean, well, that's not true. They're still defelonized under 4 grams, but
Oh,
you know, misdemeanors aren't fun either.
no.
So,
No,
you know,
I thank you, and I'm sure our listeners thank you as well for those lovely details. Some people plan these high pie in the sky kind of psychedelic tourist trips, and I'm
yeah.
assuming a lot of people tried to go to Denver and buy mushrooms, and they couldn't figure out where to get them.
Yeah, that was actually the number one message we got on Psychedelic Club of Denver, to the point where like we just had to cut and paste like, hi, unfortunately we can't help you out here, and asking for them could get you in trouble. Just a really compassionate no,
Yeah.
basically. And I hope that changes one day, because I clearly am a fan and supporter of psychedelics, and I want to see them really flourish. I do know, though, that there is an ayahuasca church in Florida. I want to might be called Soul Quest.
Hmm.
Um, I could have that wrong, since I'm just thinking of it off the top of my head, but they have gotten DEA approval on religious grounds. And I know that there was a church, an ayahuasca church here, called the Leaf and Divine, not the Vine, divine, as
Okay.
divinity. And I think that they may also have gotten some kind of exception, on religious grounds. And there's another one in the Pacific Northwest too. So those are worth looking into, for people who are looking to travel. I also want to say that ayahuasca is not fun. It's one of the best things I've ever done with my life, but it's not fun. So, like, if you're just looking to do some psychedelic tourism, don't do ayahuasca.
Oh, come on. So you're right. It is Soul Quest. That is Florida.
Okay, cool.
And there's, I don't know if you recommend this site or not, but the site that gave me the details about it was ayahuascachurches.org.
Cool. I have never heard of it, but I'm sure it's great.
Yeah. Thank you so much for the really great information. I want to give you
Yeah.
a personal round of applause for being
Thank you.
on the first podcast that you've ever been on.
Well, yeah, I guess so, but I used to sit in your seat for Psychedelic Club of
Oh,
Denver.
okay. Yeah, and I think that's how I saw you. You were doing some live feed on either Instagram or some other social
Yeah.
media, which is wonderful. You did a great job. You did enough of a job to have aroused my attention and allowed me to circle back over a year later.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me here. It's really been a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, we'll have to do it again sometime. And
Would love to.
look me up if you're in Arizona. I'll do the same if I'm in Denver.
Please do. Would love to show you around, and I'm sure I would have some presents for you.
That'd be fun. That'd be so fun.
Cool.
We can go rock
Yeah.
climbing or something.
Absolutely, man. I'm always down for that.
Yeah, maybe not on a macro dose, maybe a microdose.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
All right. Well, EntheoRadio is here, and we are located in the interwebs on at EntheoRadio, ENTHEO radio, and you can find us in EntheoRadio.com, and you can find us on Instagram and other social media like Meta, Facebook, whatever it's called now. You can find us sponsoring Mushroom Shaman brand. You can find us mushroomshaman.com and a bunch of other places. This is yours truly, Hugh T Alkemi, signing out with Andrew Reynolds. Thank you so much.
Thanks, you.